26 knots down the Eagle. 106 interval is a Rhino at 5. Sure, sir. 07 on Black Bass on course 1 mile. Sure, sir. 07 on Black Bass on.
In December 2001, 2 months after the commencement of operations in Afghanistan, the German military deployed a contingent of 100 operators from the Kommando Spezialkräfte, or more commonly known as the K.S.K, the Special Forces unit of the German Army. On its arrival in the country in January of 2002, the detachment came under the command of the US-led Task Force K.B.A, a multinational Special Forces task force that was operating in southern Afghanistan. After serving with K.B.A for a few months, the K.S.K then switched its focus in mid-2002 to supporting German and coalition forces in the Afghan capital city of Kabul, before unfortunately it becomes slightly harder to follow the taskings of the unit, as sources conflict with each other on whether it's completely withdrawn from Afghanistan at the end of 2002, or if the K.S.K maintained a small presence in the country throughout 2003 and 2004. What is known, however, is that from mid-2005 to 2014, the latter date marking the end of NATO combat operations in the theatre, the K.S.K not only increased its presence in the country, but also began to ramp up its operations against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, particularly in the north where the bulk of the German forces were deployed. One of its first missions during this period took place sometime in late 2005 and saw the K.S.K working alongside the US 3rd Special Forces Group to take down or clear an undisclosed target, during which one of the German operators was wounded as a result of an IED explosion. Other missions included a raid against an Al-Qaeda bomb-making house in Kabul in October of 2006, and a heli-borne assault against a Taliban meeting in Baghlan province on the 12th of October 2012 that was codenamed Operation Moonlight and led to the capture of 17 senior Taliban officials, among them the orchestrator of an IED attack against German troops on the 2nd of June 2011. However, none of these operations carried out in the late 2000s and early 2010s would impact or shape the K.S.K as much as the one conducted on the 4th of May 2013. At 1700 on that spring day, a detachment of Afghan policemen were conducting a routine security patrol near the village of Zaman Kil in the north of Baghlan province, when they were ambushed by a numerically superior Taliban force that was entrenched in a nearby wooded area. Pinned down by the enemy fire, the Afghans radioed for reinforcements, with a 17-man team from the K.S.K being mobilised from forward operating base Kilagai. Arriving in the vicinity of the ambush location, the 17-man team moved forward and linked up with their Afghan counterparts, who, instead of assisting the German operators in neutralising the enemy threat, began to disengage from the contact and flee from the area, with reports stating that the policemen established a new position approximately a kilometre away from where they watched the battle unfold. This incident sparked anger throughout the German military, with senior German defence officials in the aftermath questioning the future of the relationship between the German and Afghan forces, whilst one member of the K.S.K stated that they, the Afghan policemen, were cowardly and let us down. Nonetheless, the men of the K.S.K didn't have time to assess what was happening, and were forced to seek whatever cover they could find as the Taliban insurgents switched their focus to the German troops. Despite returning fire, it quickly became clear to the German operators that they were not only outnumbered but also outgunned, as the enemy fighters brought into action heavy caliber machine guns and rocket launchers. Realising this, the operators called for immediate air support, which initially came in the form of 2 German UH Tiger helicopters which launched their onboard rockets into the forest, before being replaced by a similar number of US attack helicopters, and later 2 US A-10 Thunderbolt aircraft, which bombed and strafed the enemy strongpoint. The weight of this aerial bombardment was effective in silencing the enemy gunfire, providing the 17-man K.S.K team a short period of respite to gather their bearings and take hold of the situation. Eventually, with the fighting having died down, the decision was made to send a 4-man patrol forward to the forest to gather intelligence from the contact and to be certain that the enemy was neutralised. However, as the small team reached the edge of the wooded area, a Taliban fighter who was hunkered down in his foxhole opened fire with his AK-47, hitting Hauptfeldwebel Daniel Wirth before training his rifle into one of the other operators, who was struck by a bullet to his helmet and knocked off his feet. Luckily, the bullet failed to pierce the ballistic material of the helmet, and the second soldier was fortunate to walk away from the incident with only minor wounds to his head. Meanwhile, the 2 other operators of the patrol engaged and killed the Taliban fighter, prior to rushing to the assistance of their wounded colleagues and pulling them back to the safety of the rest of the K.S.K team, who were laying down cover and fire as a dozen more Taliban insurgents emerged from their dugouts and engaged the German troops. Subsequently, over the course of the next hour, the German special forces, despite becoming dangerously low on ammunition, fought off a numerically superior Taliban force, causing an unknown number of enemy casualties, until a couple of US Army helicopters arrived to evacuate them from the region. On seeing the American aircraft, the German troops, several of whom were carrying the 2 wounded operators, began to disengage from the firefight and make their way to the landing zone, where they boarded the helicopters, all the while under constant enemy observation, and were extracted back to Forward Operating Base Kilagai. Upon touching down at the base, the wounded were rushed to a nearby aid post, where, sadly despite the best efforts by the medics to save his life, Hauptfeldwebel Daniel Wirth was pronounced as killed in action in the evening of the 4th of May 2013.